J-U-I, which tonight is just a jumble of J things. And joining me in the land where the Jumblies live are an owl, Joe Brand. And we have to have a pussycat, John Sessions. And a beautiful pea-green Dara O'Brien. And all at sea with a mind like a sieve, Alan Davis. So, let's hear your J buzzers, if we may. Joe goes...
I'm still Jenny from the...
Yes, that was obviously some female artiste. J-Lo. J-Lo.
Yeah.
John goes...
I got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. Hit me!
I got 10 points if you knew who that was.
Usher.
I think Jay would have helped you.
Jay-Z?
It's too late now. Yes, Jay-Z is the answer. Jay-Z. Right. Or Jay-Z, as we call him. Yeah. And Dara goes...
It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money.
And that was...
The lovely Jessie J.
Jessie J, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Alan.
Jay, we're like Jack and Jill. Hell is the love light in your eyes.
Oh, it's the alphabet song. I think that was Perry Como. I may have been imagining
It wasn't a J person, was it?
No.
I think it might have been his brother Jerry Como.
Never mind. Those are the all J buzzers, and J is our jamboree today. So, what do jockeys use their whips for?
Hit me!
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Do they have whips, or are they not called crops?
A riding crop is a whip, so that's not...
Well, recently, they have decided that they can only use the whip, I believe, on the flat 8 times, and in the final furlong, if they use it more than 5 times, they forfeit their portion of the win, if they do in fact win.
Wow, this is very impressive. For all I know, you're right.
Yeah.
I know that in Britain, if you use your whip more than 8 times, there is almost always going to be a steward's inquiry.
It's only if you use it on the horse. I mean, if you're hitting yourself...
Yeah, obviously. I was taking that as read.
Yeah. Is he being lowered on like the old kings used to do?
That is Frankie Dettori's signature leap from the saddle.
You know he's wearing Arsenal colours there because he's an Arsenal fan.
Oh, is that the reason?
I made that up.
No, of course he isn't. He wears the colours of his owner.
There is, of course, the very famous American jockey, Robert Mapplethorpe, who decided...
arse jockey.
He's an arse jockey because he decided to put his whip up his arse.
He did.
And photograph it, the way we all do, I think.
And it caused rather a stir in American circles, to say the least.
It's a variation on the photocopier thing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, so...
Wherein you put a photocopy up your arse.
Oh, surely we've all been there.
Yeah. No, I'm presuming it's some sort of encouragement to the horse to run, you know?
You used a very important word, encouragement, because, of course, naturally, the RSPCA and those who care for animals are not particularly, frankly, pleased by the sight of animals being hit for sport. They don't find it acceptable.
Quite a weapon when you see it close up.
It's a heck of a thing, but... There's been a study by the RSPCA at Sydney University. They found that whipping does not have the effect of horsing a speed up. Speeding a horse up. These glasses...
I don't know all street on you there, but when you horse your speed up, it does take... it's when you get your methamphetamine to mix heroin in. That will make you run.
What have you done with Stephen Craft?
All right, OK, let me start that again. They found that whipping does not, in fact, have the effect of speeding a horse up. The RSPCAA claims this settles the case against whipping. The study's been criticised by racing authorities. They say it's too small a cohort of testings, only 48 horses in 5 races, etc. According to jockeys, speed is not the main purpose of the whip. The main uses are safety of both horse and jockey, stopping the horse from veering, losing balance, backing off from a jump, or prompting it to change the length of its stride. They're never allowed to use it to coerce the horse. The other is precisely the word you used, encouragement, which obviously the animal lobby says, come on, that's just a euphemism for coercion.
Yes, it'd be delightful if you could run just a tiny bit faster now. This race is almost at an end.
I think we've all seen horses being enthusiastically encouraged in the last furlong of the race.
If you're in a race in which you've somebody alongside you, like at a parents' day for school, right?
Egg and spoon.
Egg and spoon. Oh, no, more the 3-legged one, where you've got somebody with you. If one of the people had a whip and felt that you were lagging and other parents were beating you and then whipped you, your motivation wouldn't be to run. It would stop whipping me, you prick.
Yes,
yeah, and also the notion that, you whip me in the bum, therefore I will be propelled forward as opposed to reacting, veering off, randomly finding out what
I was caned in prep school and I never won a single race. It was terrible.
Did you? You see, they whipped you every day.
They whipped me every
But did
day.
they whip you during the races? Because that would be an impressive prep school thing if they let you start, if they gave you a head start and then ran after you with the cane.
It would be a five-legged race.
I'm not saying that
When
I'm
you say three-legged race, you're thinking of two people, but what we're talking about here, Dar, is horses.
Well, yeah, but I wasn't saying that the last time I went to a school sports day, I brought a horse in an effort to win the three-legged race. Nobody sussed it.
I would love to see that.
Have you let my delightful wife, Juniper?
What happened to the old carrot dangle in front of them?
Ah, the carrot on the stick, you're absolutely right. Well, inflicting pain is not part of the intended method. The whip, currently used in British horse racing, has an energy-absorbing design, which means it does not cause pain if used correctly, supposedly. The fact is, some people, and I have to I probably count myself amongst them, think it would be a nice idea to have a sport in which you didn't have to hit animals at all. But maybe I'm wrong. However, what does a robot jockey do?
Ah, yeah, these robot jockeys ride camels, don't they?
You are good, and you've already got the point.
Yeah, the robot jockeys, they're a form of racing in Dubai, in particular, and perhaps across
In the UAE, generally.
They have camel racing, and the camels, I think at that speed, probably couldn't take human weight on them. They have to be quite small. So I'm presuming that at some stage they experimented with either little people or with children. Yeah.
It was reintroduced by King Fahd of Saudi Arabia in the 1970s, and children were indeed taken from their parents and were forced to be the jockeys on these camels.
What do you mean taken from their parents? What, people would just turn up at a random house?
I'm afraid, as you probably know, much of the service industries are performed by Sri Lankans and Indians. The Gulf Arab people themselves don't do much of the basic work, and it was Indian children who were taken to be jockeys. It was not a pleasant story, and there's no way of dressing it up nicely.
And how much control do they have over the camels exactly?
Well, they've got reins, and they also have GPS, so they know where they are. Now, you may say, why they put a face and a hat and costume on it. The fact is, the camels were spooked out when the robots just looked like machines. The camels were much more relaxed at the idea that it was a human on them, because they've sort of grown used to the idea.
Right.
So these only weigh a few kilos. They're not that expensive, about $500 each. They whip the camels by remote control, because the managers are following in a truck. So they did whip, I'm afraid. They're far lighter than the child jockeys, and I suppose it's less inhumane. They were designed in Switzerland.
Please, may I tell you the only camel joke that I know?
Please.
OK. There's two guys in the army out in the desert, and there's a new recruit, and there are no women around at all, and the new recruit says, what do we do for sex? And the old guy says, I'm afraid it's the camels. And so that evening, they're all let out towards the camels, and the old bloke's running really fast, and the young guy says, what are you doing? It's only a camel. And he goes, yeah, but you don't want to get an ugly one, do you?
So what are those camels we're looking at? What sort of camels are they?
I'm sorry, Chief, there is another camel joke. Which is, it's the same starting point. Initially taken for the first couple of minutes and said, oh, I'm afraid there are no women here. I'm afraid it's the camels. So late at night, the guy declares, I can't take it anymore. I'm as horny as hell. And he goes out and he rides the camel. And he comes back in and goes, well, that's the best we can do. And the man says, well, actually, when I said we've got the camels, we normally ride them into town.
Anybody else got any camel jokes? No. Excellent, excellent.
They are dromedaries, aren't they?
Those are dromedaries, and how can you tell?
Because they have two humps.
No, because they have one hump.
Oh. Oh, I thought they were sitting, the robots were sitting between the humps.
It does look a bit like that, no. Bactrian camels with two humps are incredibly rare.
Right.
Well, especially in the wild. That's a Bactrian on the left.
Yes, yes.
You find them in Mongolia and in China.
Right.
And there are probably not much more than 1,000
and
left
they
in the
used to have
wild.
them at the zoo when I was a kid, because that's the sort I've been
That's what
on.
we think of as a proper camel, a two-humped camel.
In fact, it only had one hump, and then I sat on it, and it looked like...
So, there's another sport that's associated with camels in another country. You familiar with it?
Smoking?
There is camel smoking. That is unquestionably, I wouldn't say a sport, but it's an occupation.
Sport to me.
No, this is a physical sport involving the camels.
Water polo?
No, it doesn't involve humans. It only involves the camels.
Chess.
I sometimes... I look at you and I wonder where these things grow, where they come from. What's going on?
Just be nice to see, wouldn't it?
It would be fantastic to see camels playing chess.
Checkmate.
Yeah.
Thirsty? Me neither. Go again.
We have to go to Turkey. In Turkey, they have two males and a female, and as often happens with mammals...
Three-legged races?
No, three-legged. No, you've got two males and a female, and what that tends to make happen is the two males fight. So you then take the female away and you have camel wrestling. It's a Turkish sport. It's just a kind of wrestling. They kind of push each other over.
This is enormously popular. Look at the crowds.
Yes.
It's good numbers coming off of the camel.
Oh, it's
yeah.
incredibly popular. This is given to me as if it's unusual, but I suppose maybe it is. Maybe it's just me. When they're in the mood for sex, they urinate, use their tails to swish urine onto their own back, froth at the mouth, spit and dribble. Isn't that usual?
Also, our hind feathers flare, and we stamp.
That's right. Apparently, it seems they deliberately waste water by this urinating and frothing and dribbling as a way of showing their superiority. Because obviously water conservation is what they're all about as desert animals. Anyway, why does Joe Camel like Nosmo King?
Hit me!
Oh,
Joe Camel was the mascot for Camel cigarettes.
yes. There he is.
Old Joe. There's old Joe up there. And Nosmo King
Yes.
was a British vaudeville act of the 1930s. And I think, obviously Nosmo King is no smoking, but
That's right.
that's not
He saw two doors. One said Nosmo, one said King. And when they closed in the theatre, it said
Nosmo King.
But he wasn't tempted to come to Phi Rigsit or something else.
Emerge, NC exit. No, he wasn't any of those. It was in the 1920s that he, as you said, in the 30s. He was Roy Alcircle. But you haven't actually answered my question, which is why would Joe Camel like Nosmo King? You'd think he'd dislike him.
Because Nosmo King used to be sponsored by Camel Tobacco.
No. Joe Camel and cigarette manufacturers would like something that said no smoking.
It makes you think of smoking.
Yes. What psychiatrists have found is that no smoking signs make people want a cigarette.
Makes you feel rebellious.
It makes you feel, well, not just rebellious, it puts it in your head. Putting big signs up saying no smoking is something that makes people want to smoke.
Worked very well with that bloke, couldn't it?
Yeah, it worked very well. The fact is, anyway, the sign no smoking makes people want to smoke, so that's why Joe Camel would like Nosmo King. That's a rather sort of complex way of putting it. Now, which one of you can imitate an expectant jackrabbit?
Hit me!
Well, yeah, wow, that's great.
It's a kind of hare, a jackrabbit.
It is a hare. It's
a hare.
American for hare, basically.
It's American hare, yeah. But the female jackrabbit, when she gives birth to her young, makes no attempt to suckle them, and they're just left to forage for their own. So she's a bad mother.
Daily
and I
Mail
would imitate her like that, with a fag. I guess.
Well, what you say may be true, but there's something more extraordinarily true about the pregnancy of the female jackrabbit. And this was something that was suggested by Aristotle. I know how you love to have an ancient Greek...
Distracted by the rabbit being fisted in the
Absolutely. I don't know who did our little silhouette. It's not entirely successful. It's a good effort, and we thank them for it. But Aristotle suggested that hares could get pregnant when they were already pregnant, which in most mammals, I think, isn't that rather sweet? I think you'll agree, is a bit peculiar. Aristotle thought it, and he was scoffed by scientists until very, very recently it was discovered that he was absolutely right. It was discovered in Berlin.
Cats do this. Cats,
Male hare, cats.
Cats do this. Yeah, cats. Because a cat can have. We have
by more than one
Yeah,
tom.
we have two cats in there,
Yeah.
of same mother but different fathers.
That's exactly. And humans even can. There were twins born in 2010 in Arkansas, conceived 2 weeks apart. They were actually conceived at different times. So one egg was fertilised and then another. So they could have had different fathers. Twins with different fathers. Weird idea. All this is recently new knowledge, but Aristotle was spot on. It's known as superfecundation, when two different ova are fertilised in the same cycle. Or it's superconception. Oh, the little fluffy bunnies. So, complete the phrase. Pregnant mothers should eat...
Loads. Burgers.
The equivalent of 2 slices of bread extra per day, and no more is necessary.
That's probably about right, and that's only in the 3rd trimester, actually. The fact is, the idea that you should eat for 2, which you managed to avoid, is nonsense. A pregnant woman should eat no more than she normally eats. She might have changes in appetite. Did you have any particular dietary desires when you were pregnant?
I gnawed my husband's leg occasionally.
And that was unusual.
Not as far as our marriage was
No,
concerned.
that's what I mean. So did you have any peculiar appetites that were specifically related to pregnancy?
No, I was very boring. I didn't
you
really.
didn't. No,
but
so
I mean,
coal.
they do say. Well, they say that you only want to eat coal if you're lacking vitamins, don't
exactly,
they?
yeah. So
no
you were
one
obviously
eats
not
coal
lacking
anymore.
anything.
My mother smoked my father's pipe.
Could she not get her own pipe?
There you...
It was her pregnancy that made her want to do it.
Yeah, she just loved pipe tobacco.
God, that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
There's no more beautiful image of motherhood than a pregnant woman smoking a pipe. It's the big essentials of nature.
Yes,
And a woman goes...
It's quite...
tapping it out on the table and then digging in and then
tapping out on the belly, though.
In fact, when I got pregnant, my grandma said to me, "Oh, eating for 2, are we?" And I went, "Bog off, I'm not cutting down."
Anyway, moving on. So, what have they done to the javelin to improve it?
Hit me.
Johnny, you've got to stop answering every
Oh,
question.
sorry. I'm sorry to be a bore.
No, you're not being a bore. It's fine.
Yeah.
I like enthusiasm. It's
Okay.
just like a little puppy shagging a sapling. Thank you. Alan, yes.
Didn't they change the javelin because they were throwing it too far?
Yes,
Were
that's
they
the point.
in danger of hitting the long-distance runners on the other side of the stage as they
Basically,
went past?
yes.
Yeah.
Basically, you don't want them to be able to throw it further than 100 metres. And what kept happening was that they just got better and better. And there was a particular technique called the Spanish technique, which involved spinning your body round like a discus thrower or a hammer thrower. And Miguel de la Cadro Salcedo threw a javelin 112 metres using this system. It was outlawed by the IAAF.
If you
because
spear
it's-
one of the judges and he staggers backwards, he's taken into an ambulance and driven to hospital, the record's going to be about 5
Yeah,
months.
I think you're right. And that was their problem. Their problem was simply safety, especially with the Spanish style of spinning, because if it went out of control, there was no net like with a hammer. You could spear anybody. So they banned the spinning business, the turning round. But then javelin makers used special paint and dimples to improve the aerodynamic nature. So again, they had to ban that. Like with a
I
golf
was
ball.
actually a javelin champion when
Were
I was
you?
at school. I was. But I slightly ruined my career because on the last sports day, I was in the toilets having a fag and I was using Swan Vestas and I blew it out and put it back in the box while it was still alight and it
Ow.
blew up in my hand.
Ouch.
And so I had to throw the javelin with my left hand and it went about 3 foot.
They should make them throw underarm, that would be good.
That would certainly make a difference. At the moment, so all these things have been banned, all these dimples, all these special paints, but they're going to have to make the javelin worse again soon because the world record now, with the current javelin, is 98.48 metres. It's really close to the maximum.
Is there a standard javelin that they would all use? It's not like they arrive at the
in
stadium.
fact, they ought, presumably, to allow people to take,
everyone-
force
everyone
people to
puts-
take one at
everyone
random.
puts- everyone puts a javelin in and everyone takes a
Yeah,
javelin.
like a billy cue or something. But I will give you points if you can tell me, as far as the javelin is concerned, almost exactly a third of all javelin medals awarded since 1908 have gone to competitors from 3 countries.
Finland.
Finland,
Keep going.
Czechoslovakia,
Poland.
and the
Bulgaria.
United Kingdom.
No, it's really weird. You should have stayed where you were with Finland, because the others, it was Norway and Sweden.
Oh,
really?
Scandinavia is the answer. So it's just, so for some reason, they seem to be very good at throwing sticks. There you are. Very good. So, now, which should you avoid going to bed with? A jactitator or a jactitator?
The second one.
Why?
Because it means someone that wiggles about a lot.
Yes!
What does it?
Yeah, the official name for it is Willis-Ekbom disease, also known as restlessness or particularly restless leg syndrome. That's one meaning of jactitation. The
other?
Yes, the other is...
Is speaking unpleasantly of somebody.
No, nice that you're trying, and don't be put off. I still want to see that puppy shagging that sapling, but it's a very specific, I won't say crime exactly, it's a malfeasance, possibly.
Yes.
It's a wrongdoing that people do, and that is to maintain that you're married to someone when you aren't.
That's right.
You are so angry because you're... Why are you angry? If a man says, oh, yes, she's my wife, we're married, she goes, no, we're not. You can go to court, and your remedy is a suit of jactitation of marriage, in which you ask the court to declare that you are not married to the person who is claiming that you are.
Is the jactitation, is it the denying of the marriage, or is it the maintaining the marriage? You're still married when you're not.
A jactitator is someone who claims to be married to you when they aren't.
So ding dong darling, I'm home. You're not married to me. That is the bad guy is the ding dong darling, I'm
Yes.
home in this situation.
Exactly.
Stop doing this.
I could actually take you to court because you never stop.
Saying that we are married. But we're married in comedy, Alan. We're married in comedy.
There you go again.
Comedy and erotic love. Those two, surely. Hello.
Do you know what the opposite is? Because my husband often says he's not married. What's that called?
Shame.
Embarrassment.
Embarrassment. On the subject of twitchy legs, why do we dance around when we need a pee? Why do we do that?
Try and keep it moving so it
Yeah.
doesn't come out the pipe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, the odd thing is, it is the worst thing to do. If you really want not to pee, keep as still as possible. But it's
Clench the end of your cock incredibly hard.
I've tried that, but it doesn't work.
I found it been good to get someone else to do that. No, a full bladder creates.
I'm not in it. Another one.
A full bladder creates a sense of urgency in the mind. And the conflict between the desire to take action and to relieve the stress and the fact that circumstances don't permit it is translated into various rhythmic displacement behaviours.
Enoch Powell, who used to say, I always speak when I'm dying for a piss because I do
lends
much
urgency.
more... Yes, and David Cameron thought he was going to have a crack at it, didn't he?
Oh, did he? Well, no wonder
Wet himself.
He's speaking.
So during Enoch Powell's famous Rivers of Blood speech...
Rivers of Piss
Every
speech.
time he said Rivers of, he would go, oh. That portfolio, I do think those Your Honor should be done on a just obvious demand, because the guy at the end seems very relaxed about it, but man, the guy number 3 really needs to go very soon.
Perfectly good tree, just there.
Of course, it's probably a pop festival, so half of them are actually wanting to go and ingest drugs rather than urinate. That's the thing.
My lord, they're probably horsing the speed, my lord.
Smacking themselves with skank. I know all the words, so. All right, who gets most use from Jacobson's organ? Yes.
Mrs. Jacobson gets most.
All right. It's your turn now, Dave.
Jacobson's organ enables particularly lions and deer to chemically detect the pheromones in creatures of the opposite sex, in lionesses or...
Not just creatures of the sex, but also prey and predators.
Prey and predators.
Yes, it's an organ. It's an organ. There's you said in snakes. It's not just
Yeah.
lion. It's not just related to mammals, but it's a patch of specialised skin on the roof of the mouth. Many vertebrates have it, including humans. We have it. Oh yes, we do. Unfortunately, we seem to have lost the use of it. But snakes and lizards can tell when an ant has been present a week earlier, just by using that.
How useful is that?
Well, it can tell them when it comes back again.
An ant was here a week ago.
It might be.
It's really improved
And then
my
the snake
life.
goes, oh, I'd love an ant now. No, last week.
In the case of horses, giraffes, camels, zebras, big animals, when they do it, there's an expression you've probably seen them pull, where they almost turn their face inside out and stop breathing like that.
Right.
And that's in order to get the chemicals onto...
An ant!
onto
There's been an ant!
Yeah.
An ant in a stable last Tuesday!
In their case, it's less likely to be an ant that there was a female or a male or a predator or a prey.
Makes them look gorgeous.
It's a funny old look, isn't it?
The one in the middle's had its hair styled by someone from Girls Aloud. It's had the GHDs on that.
It's a rather fetching Emma Bunting look. I thought it was rather touching little bang. So, what could be as good as spending 8 hours sitting on the lavatory?
Oh, very little.
What could be as good as sitting 8 hours on the lavatory?
With the seat up or down?
Sitting with the seat down, I think, probably.
That's
Yeah.
good. How
In terms of evacuating yourself.
No, you're not actually pooing for 8 hours. You're sitting on the lavatory for 8 hours. You're expending calories.
Oh, yeah.
Just by sitting on the
Oh, yeah, well, anytime. Right now, this is not recommended in any of the books, but this, we are all losing
We're
weight
burning calories.
right now.
Plus, of course, we're using our brains, or some of us are using our brains.
What did you mean by that?
The fact is, 8 hours of sitting on the lavatory uses the same calories as 1 hour of jogging.
Good God.
No.
Yes!
Right, I'm off.
Truth. You don't have to be a lavatory. Pretend you're on the lavatory. Unless you want to go for a jog.
Unless you really are pushing. Unless you're
then-
really
If
heaving.
you are, as they used to say, straining at stool. Yes.
Then that takes some clenching. Unclench, clench, unclench. That'd be good for you
Yes,
as well.
yes, right.
But for 8 hours, that's too much.
That's too much.
You'd have a sphincter that could grab onto a pool cue. And I don't know what you could do with a sphincter.
Don't
You could
go
do
any
that.
further. You've gone far enough.
Can I go further?
Please do.
Well, a friend of mine used to work as a nursing assistant in a home for elderly people, and there was one very old guy, I think he's about 95, and he was really constipated. So they gave him a massive dose of laxatives, and he was kind of left on the loo to see what would happen. And this friend of mine swears this is true, and he said that when he came back, this bloke was lying on the floor. And the reason he'd fallen off the toilet was because he'd done such a big poo, it had levered him off.
Oh, my God. But it's a charming story, and I love it.
You're not getting any cardiovascular work, though, are you? Sitting
You're
on the
not
loo?
doing. It's not
Plenty more where
aerobically
that came
efficient.
from.
No.
There was a man who had a light bulb screwed up his arse, and this was mentioned to Alan Bennett. And Alan Bennett said, "What wattage?"
Where did modern jogging as a mass movement begin?
Jim Fix in the 1960s, was it?
No, you're right. He was the first American to make it popular, but there was actually... So, yes.
Forrest Gump.
No, and again, that is Jim
Run,
Fix.
Forrest, run.
That is Jim Fix, who was the man who popularised jogging in America, but who died of a heart attack while jogging.
That fixed it for Jim.
It fixed it. The man who actually gets the credit for starting is a man called Arthur Lydiard, who was a New Zealander in the early 60s. The police would see people running in tracksuits and they would stop them. I mean, it was just such an odd sight. It had never been seen before. Now we take it for granted.
Suspicious activity.
Especially in New Zealand, people jogging all over the place. It's a very outdoorsy place. But then, yes, they were constantly being arrested. Yeah. The father of utilitarianism. Who would you describe as the father of utilitarianism?
Jeremy Bentham.
Jeremy Bentham.
He's
yes.
stuffed.
He's stuffed.
London University.
They've taken him out of London University.
University College, yes.
They've removed him, haven't they?
He's in a box. Nowadays, you have to make a special appointment to go
Yeah,
and see
because
him.
people kept stealing him.
Yeah, they did.
I did a debate as a student in London University, and I was walking around the corridors trying to get the thing ready in my head, and I just walked into this. I saw this box in the middle of a corridor, and it's not like there's a big sign like going.
And he's dressed.
Body in a box, body in a box, body in a box. You just see this little cupboard, and you look in, and there's like.
One of the most brilliant men of his age, of course.
Jeremy Bentham and James Mill used their utilitarian hypotheses on John Stewart. James Mill was John Stuart Mill's father.
I see, right, yeah.
And he and Bentham sort of bombarded poor John Stuart Mill as a child with facts. So by the age of 4, he could speak Greek and Latin. And in his teens, he had an appalling breakdown as a result of this forced knowledge feeding. And the only thing that brought him back to sanity was reading the poetry of Wordsworth and Coleridge.
So like my own life.
Yes.
I thought it was only me.
I have to do a story that's worse than the poo story.
Go on, then.
Well, it's to do with pranks at medical school.
Oh, lovely.
My flatmate, they had a girl in their group at medical school that was very annoying, so they decided to play a trick on her. So basically, they got a hand from the lab and put it on her pillow in the student digs. And then they all hid in the kitchen, and she came in from a night out, went into her room, and they expected that she would just open the door and go, well, like that, and then they would all go in there and point and laugh. And she went in there, and for ages there was just complete silence. And they thought, oh, dear God, what's going on?
Please, God, no, not what I was thinking.
I hope you're... I hope you're not thinking what I'm thinking, Alan. Please, let's not...
Did she ball it into a fist?
No. Don't.
And then couldn't get it out.
We're all thinking the wrong... must be the wrong thing.
No, so they went into the room, and she was sitting on the bed eating it.
Oh, that's even worse!
No.
Oh.
I'm sorry to have to tell you, but that's absolutely true.
Why was she eating it?
She was
I think
hungry.
It freaked, yeah.
What was that? She was hungry. It's like I'm hungry right now. I'm not eating your hand.
Oh, Lord. Well, yeah. OK, how did we get there? Oh, yes. We were talking about jogging, weren't we? And then we were talking about the stuffing of Jeremy Bentham. Anyway, he invented a kind of trotting jog that he called antiprandial circumgyration, which was his way... yeah, how annoying of him to be intelligent.
Yeah,
if only everybody were really
it's not annoying
stupid.
of him to be intelligent, it's quite annoying of us to be a bit thick.
Oh, no, then, but don't be. Celebrate the glory of Jeremy Bentham. He was one of our greatest men. However, jogging is apparently very good for the memory. It does seem that a few days of running can lead to the growth of hundreds of thousands of new brain cells in the memory-forming part of the
I'm
brain.
getting off the toilet and going back
Yes,
to
so
jogging.
in that part, you can also reproduce that by lying on a mechanised table that shakes the body several times a second. And that will also increase your memory.
What are those things? No, those things you stand on that vibrate really quickly. The
Oh, those plates.
Oh, yes, those are
the
fun.
plates.
Yeah.
Well, I dare say. I think that's like Bruce Forsyth.
It's the Forsythificator. Nice to see you.
An evening here without Bruce Forsyth or Ken Dodd. Oh, you've got a good Ken Dodd story, haven't you?
Oh, gosh.
Tell me your Ken Dodd story.
A broadcaster of some description went to interview a politician, British politician, and he saw this wonderful picture, as he perceived, of Ken Dodd. On the wall, and the politician came in, and the guy said, "Oh, that's wonderful, Ken Dodd. I mean, he's just one of the greatest comedians this country has ever produced." And the man said, "Do you mind? That's my wife."
I want to know who the politician...
I wonder. I do.
His wife looks like Ken Dodd.
It's true. My wife. Odd Doddy, as I call her.
What a fine day. What a fine day to marry a politician. I'm telling you.
And in came the children.
The little dizzy man. Oh, my God. Anyway, 8 hours on the loo burn as many calories as an hour's jogging. So, what does a cockroach find absolutely disgusting?
Jeremy Kyle.
Yes, is the right answer. Because Jeremy Kyle, almost, but he does count, is a human being. Right? We don't like cockroaches, and cockroaches don't like us. If they see us, they not only run away as soon as possible, they wash themselves after they've been touched by us. They find us revolting.
Can I used to live in a flat when I was a student nurse,
Right.
and it was absolutely inundated with cockroaches. And one night I came home from the pub, and I'd left the telly on, and there were 2 cockroaches sitting on the settee watching telly. Like, looking at the telly, kind of doing...
Is it a documentary about insects?
It was Jeremy Kyle.
So they like Jeremy Kyle, you're telling me?
Well, there were people,
They don't
whatever
like
they
people.
were watching.
They really don't like people.
But also, as well, I was once painting the ceiling in the flat as well, and a cockroach actually fell in my mouth.
Oh!
The thing is, cockroaches are everywhere, aren't they? I mean, in hospitals, particularly anywhere where there's sort of... I once went into a hospital kitchen at night and turned the light on, and for a split second, the entire floor was brown.
Yeah, I know,
and then it was
that's
white.
it's
So
just astonishing. And then they disappear. And they sort of don't do that much damage, and yet they do repulse us. And the point is, we repulse them, hence they disappeared so quickly. But there is something that they must hate even more. And this is a real test for anybody who's sung all things bright and beautiful. The good Lord made them all, because he also made some things that are not very bright and beautiful, and one of the least bright and beautiful things imaginable, which is parasitic wasp, that has the most extraordinary life cycle. They're called jewel wasps, because they're faintly kind of jewel-coloured. They go up to the cockroach. They then impart a sting into its brain, which turns it into a sort of zombie. It doesn't kill it, but it kind of makes it just like... And they then saw off one of its antennae and uses the other one as a lead, literally, and pulls it to its nest. There, it's leading it. It's now pulling it. As you see, it's much smaller than the cockroach.
Good God.
This poor cockroach, I'm afraid, is going to have a pretty miserable time. He then gets packed into the nest, and then he lays eggs inside. And the baby wasp is born in and eats the cockroach alive from the inside, in a very special order to keep the cockroach alive, because cockroach meat goes off very quickly and it's very warm. And that is the life cycle of the jewel wasp. Now, you ask me that there's a benign, divine God who looks down on creation and loves it all. You just ask him how the hell he came up with something so cruel, so unpleasant, so vile. Only evolution could cause that kind of horrible, horrible life cycle for the cockroach. I mean, it's a pretty grim business. So there you go. I thought I'd leave you with that charming thought.
Yes. If only you could do that with Piers Morgan.
Yes, oh.
Very pleasing
Very good.
thought.
Now, here's a simple question. Why are we all such arseholes?
Well, I'm contractually obliged.
Well, let me say that there are 2 types of living creature. There are protostomes and deuterostomes. Stome is the Greek for mouth. Now, if you're a protostome, when you're just developing as an egg and dividing and turning into what will become a lovely little person, protostomes start at the mouth and then grow outwards. But humans, we start as an arsehole. We're deuterostomes because we're second mouths. We start as a bottom and then work outwards. So we begin as arseholes.
Yeah.
We all begin as little botties. It's a rather nice thing to know. It puts us all on an equal footing. Next time you look at George Osborne saying something grand about the economy, say you started life and continued life as an arsehole. So there you are. Now, this is very exciting because we have a very special finale tonight. Tonight, entirely alone, without the aid of a safety net, I am going to do something that has never been done by any human being since the beginning of time. Yes.
Right.
And all I need is
A
this.
simple pack of cards? No.
All I need is indeed a simple pack of cards. What I'm going to do is shuffle. I'm going to shuffle this pack, OK? Now, there are different ways of shuffling. As you know, there's the overhand shuffle.
Shut up.
Like that. There is your standard riffle, which just riffle, put cards together. Everyone can do that. Wait. I haven't come to it yet. And then there's the weave, which is rather more pleasing. Some people can do a weave that's so accurate, they actually go A, B, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, like that. And there, that gives you a nice little fan like so.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
And now I have produced a pack of cards. And that pack of cards, ladies and gentlemen, believe it or not, has never before in the history of our planet been in that order. It's never been in that order before.
How can you
we know that?
Yes.
It's a simple mathematical fact. The order of cards is a gigantic number. It's a number which is known by mathematicians as shriek. You write it as 52 exclamation mark, you'll know this.
52 factorial.
It's 52 factorial, which is 52 times 51 times 50 times 49 times 48. These are all the possibilities in which a pack of cards can be. Just 52 of them. And that number is big. It's this big. Look how big this number is. That number is so big that were you to imagine that if every star in our galaxy had 1 trillion planets, each with 1 trillion people living on them, and each of these people had 1 trillion pack of cards, and somehow they managed to shuffle them all 1,000 times a second, and they'd been doing that since the Big Bang, they would only just now be starting to repeat shuffles. So I can say with all the mathematical certainty that is possible that this pack of cards has never been in this order before. It's an absolute world first.
Wow, very good.
I know that seems amazing, but that number, it tells it all. It is astonishing. And I have done something, as I say, that has never been done by any human being before. I've produced this pack of cards in this order. And for that, I'm going to award myself some points. So there. Anyway, that comes to the scores, I think. I will go in reverse order from, well, from last to first. It's actually marvellous. We don't have a single minus number. We don't even have a 0. Everybody's on a plus. We have equal Dara, Joe and Alan with 1 point. In a clear second place with 16 is John Sessions. But the clear winner with 52 shriek, 52 times 51, that number you saw, is me. That's all from John, Dara, Joe, Alan and me. Thank you. Be utterly lovely unto each other, and good night.